Walmart, a place many of us visit for quick shopping trips, late-night snacks, or everyday essentials. But what if I told you that beneath the fluorescent lights and friendly greetings, there's a darker side to those 24-hour stores? This isn't just another bizarre encounter in the aisles or an unsettling cashier. This is a true and deeply disturbing story that happened to someone just like you, an ordinary person caught up in an extraordinary nightmare. Get ready, because tonight we're diving into a true disturbing Walmart horror story. Story number 1. Our story begins with a woman named Zoe, a single mother who often had to do her grocery shopping late at night after finishing her shifts. On this particular night, around 11:30 p.m., Zoe was making her routine trip to Walmart. The store wasn't crowded, just a few late-night shoppers minding their own business. The overhead lights flickered slightly, but Zoe didn't pay it much attention. She grabbed a cart and headed down the brightly lit but eerily quiet aisles. But as she moved from aisle to aisle, she started to notice something odd. It wasn't the usual quiet you'd expect at that time. It was ... to quiet. No idle chatter. No distant beeps from checkout counters. Just her footsteps echoing on the tile floor. But as she moved from aisle to aisle, she started to notice something odd. It wasn't the usual quiet you'd expect at that time. It was ... to quiet. No idle chatter. No distant beeps from checkout counters. Just her footsteps echoing on the tile floor. Maybe he was just tired or lost in thought. She continued shopping, grabbing a bag of chips and tossing it into her cart. But as she moved down the aisle, she felt that prickling sensation you get when you're being watched. Zoe glanced over her shoulder, and there he was. The man was no longer looking at the shelves, he was staring directly at her. She quickly pushed her cart toward the next aisle, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. But every time she turned into a different section, she'd catch a glimpse of him a few feet behind, always keeping just enough distance to not be overtly suspicious, but close enough to make her skin crawl. Zoe tried to calm herself down. It's just a coincidence, she thought. But as she reached the back of the store near the electronics section, the lights overhead flickered again, this time more noticeably. The store seemed to hum with a low, droning sound, almost like a faint electrical buzz. Her heartbeat quickened. She decided it was time to check out and leave. But as she made her way toward the registers, she noticed something chilling. The man wasn't just following her, he was mirroring her every move. If she slowed down, he slowed down. If she sped up, so did he. And every time she glanced back, he'd freeze. His blank expression locked onto her like a predator sizing up its prey. By now, Zoe's nerves were shot. She ditched her cart and hurried toward the entrance, trying not to break into a full sprint. But just as she reached the exit, the automatic doors jammed, refusing to open. She glanced back in a panic. There he was, standing just a few feet behind her, his eyes wide and unblinking. Desperate, Zoe began banging on the glass, trying to force the doors open. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a Walmart employee, a security guard, rushing toward her. For a brief moment, she felt a glimmer of hope, but before the guard could reach her, the man suddenly turned and walked away, disappearing into one of the darkened aisles. The doors finally slid open, and Zoe bolted outside. She didn't stop until she reached her car, her hand shaking as she fumbled for her keys. When she looked back at the store from the safety of her locked car, she saw the security guard standing at the entrance, staring at her with a look that sent a shiver down her spine. It was as if he knew something he couldn't or wouldn't say. Zoe never went back to that Walmart, and she never found out who that man was or why he was following her. Some say it was just a creepy encounter, but others believe there's something more sinister at play in these all-night stores. Whatever the truth is, one thing's for sure: Zoe's story serves as a reminder that even the most ordinary places can hide extraordinary horrors. So next time you find yourself walking through the aisles late at night, remember, you're never as alone as you think you are. Story number 2. A Walmart employee working the overnight shift experienced something they'll never forget. It started with routine stock work restocking shelves and organizing products in the dead of night. But around 2 a.m., the employee noticed a man who looked out of place. He wasn't shopping. Instead, he stood at the end of the aisle, staring intensely at the employee, a sinister smile creeping across his face. The employee tried to shrug it off and continued working, but every time they turned into a different aisle, there he was, just standing and staring, never moving closer, never saying a word. As the hours dragged on, it got worse. The man began to mimic the employee's movements, walking when they walked, stopping when they stopped. By the end of the shift, the employee was so rattled they asked a coworker to walk them to their car. As they were leaving, they saw the man standing in the parking lot, watching from a distance. He never approached, but the icy, unblinking stare stayed with them long after the encounter. One night, a Walmart cashier noticed an elderly woman who appeared lost, wandering the store without a cart or basket. She was dressed in outdated clothing, almost like she had stepped out of another time. The woman kept approaching the cashier, asking the same questions over and over. "Where's my daughter?" Or "Have you seen my little girl?" The cashier tried to help, but could only direct her to the customer service desk. Minutes later, the woman vanished, thinking she had left. The cashier didn't think much of it until one of the store's managers mentioned a strange fact. The elderly woman matched the description of someone who had passed away years ago in a tragic accident. She had supposedly been searching for her daughter when she died. Other employees later claimed they had seen the same woman in different parts of the store, always wandering, always asking for her missing child. Several employees at a small-town Walmart have reported strange occurrences in the toy section, particularly late at night. According to them, toys would sometimes move on their own, action figures falling off shelves, dolls spinning in place, and electronic toys suddenly turning on without batteries. One night, an employee working inventory heard a giggle childlike and unnerving coming from an empty aisle. When the employee checked the aisle, nothing was there except for a lone stuffed bear on the floor, its eyes seeming to follow them as they moved. The employee quickly put the bear back on the shelf and left. The next night, the same bear was found on the floor again, in the exact same spot. Rumor has it that a child had gone missing in the area years ago, and some employees believe the spirit of the child is still drawn to the toys, trapped in an endless playtime. A young woman working at Walmart during closing hours had a terrifying experience that still haunts her. She was helping a customer with a return when she noticed a man lurking near the entrance. He was tall, with greasy hair and a dark hoodie that obscured his face. The store was nearly empty, and his presence felt wrong. As she completed the transaction, the man began pacing back and forth, occasionally glancing at her. When the last customer left, the man suddenly approached the counter and leaned in close, asking in a low voice, "What time do you get off?" Startled and uneasy, she lied and said her shift ended hours later. The man smirked and walked away, but he didn't leave the store. He loitered near the exit, as if waiting. The woman immediately called her manager, who escorted her to her car. As they walked outside, they noticed the man standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching them with an unsettling grin. For weeks after, she had someone escort her to her car every night, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still out there, waiting for the right moment. At a certain Walmart in the Midwest, employees have reported seeing a figure in the back storage area, a man in an old Walmart uniform, silently organizing stock. But when approached, he vanishes into thin air. According to local legend, a former employee tragically died in the store years ago after a late-night accident involving a forklift. Since then, sightings of the ghostly worker have become common. Employees often hear footsteps in empty aisles or see boxes mysteriously rearranged overnight. The most unsettling part, the figure always seems to be doing his job, as if unaware that he's no longer among the living. Some employees believe he's still trying to finish his shift, an eternal worker trapped in a loop, forever bound to the job he never completed. Story number 3. It was just after midnight when Jenna decided to make a quick run to Walmart. She was a night owl and preferred shopping late to avoid crowds. The store was practically empty, and the bright, artificial lights made the large space feel strangely hollow. Jenna grabbed a cart and began her usual route, first the snacks, then toiletries, then groceries. Everything seemed normal, except for the fact that she kept feeling like someone was watching her. Each time she looked around, though, the aisles were empty. The sensation was unnerving, but she brushed it off, thinking it was just her imagination. As Jenna turned into the bread aisle, she nearly jumped out of her skin. A man was standing at the other end, staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. He was tall, gaunt, and had a disheveled appearance, like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were dirty, and his smile a creepy, unnatural grin was what truly set Jenna on edge. She quickly looked away, trying to focus on her shopping, but as she moved down the aisle, she could feel his eyes following her. It wasn't a friendly look. It was more like he was studying her. Every instinct in her body told her to leave, but she convinced herself it was just a weird guy, nothing more. She grabbed her bread and hurried to the next aisle, hoping to put some distance between them. But when she turned the corner, there he was again, standing in the middle of the frozen food section, that same eerie grin plastered on his face. Jenna's heart was racing now. She decided to cut her shopping short and head for the checkout. But as she sped up, so did the man. No matter which aisle she turned into, he was always just a few steps behind, appearing from around corners in a way that made her question whether he was even human. She tried to lose him by zigzagging through the store, but it was no use. He was relentless, keeping a steady, unnerving pace, his grin never fading. Jenna's hands were trembling as she approached the self-checkout lanes. She quickly scanned her items, constantly glancing over her shoulder, and there he was standing near the entrance, watching her with that same predatory smile. Jenna grabbed her bags and practically ran toward the exit, her breath coming in short gasps. As she rushed out of the store, the automatic doors struggled to open fast enough, making her feel like she was trapped for just a second too long. She sprinted to her car, her eyes darting back toward the store, and saw the man standing at the entrance, just watching her leave. She fumbled with her keys, hands shaking as she unlocked her car. When she looked up, she saw him again standing in the parking lot now, closer than before, still staring at her with that grotesque grin. Jenna jumped into her car, locked the doors, and sped out of the parking lot, heart pounding in her chest. But as she glanced in her rearview mirror, she saw something that chilled her to the bone. The man was standing in the middle of the road, his face illuminated by her taillights. And though she was driving away, that smile seemed to grow wider and wider, as if he was pleased, like he knew something she didn't. Jenna never saw the man again, but for weeks, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, waiting, watching. What did he want? Was he just some deranged individual, or was there something darker at play? Whatever the case, Jenna learned one thing that night: sometimes the real horror isn't in the ghost stories or urban legends. It's in the places we think are safe, hiding in plain sight. If you enjoyed this chilling story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next creepy tale. Have a scary experience of your own? Share it in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And remember, the next time you're out late at night, pay attention to who or what might be watching.